went below where I was supposed to be, and stood about my business. The next day, the ship picked up 3 Japanese sailors, survivors of that battle. And of course they were interrogated and they were brought aboard, and that's all I remember. I just happened to be out on the main deck when I saw them pulled up out of the water. Anyway, then I went to lunch one day. Within a couple of days of that, or right close after that battle, and I ran into a guy that I'd known at BYU, a guy by the name of Paul Felt. He was the commanding officer of a minesweeper that was at work sweeping mines in Lady Gulf. It was heavily mined by the Japanese. And of course I knew him. He was the student body president when I was a freshman. So I knew who he was, and I greeted him and found out that he was the commanding officer of this minesweeper that had been hit by a kamikaze plane. And he was able to, heavily damaged as it was able to get it back into port in Tacloban, and got it all tied up, and it sank right alongside the dock. But Paul wasn't injured in any way. He lost some of the sailors and his crew were killed by that kamikaze. But that was a strange thing to run into a person that you knew. Anyway, he was out there, and then I lost track of him, don't know what happened. But I did see him after the war in Provo. He was working for BYU, and he told me about his experience.
What was your specific assignment?
Well, I was a communications watch officer, and my assignment was operating a cryptographic machine that broke code and translated into the English language. So a radio operator receiving a message would receive it as 5-letter characters in code that made no sense at all. There'd just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5 more and 5 more, till the whole message was received. And with this machine and with the proper key and setting of that machine, with the daily key, I could type like I was typing on a typewriter, and hitting, if there was a B, I'd hit the B key, but it would change to another character of the alphabet, which would be translated into the English language. So all those 5-letter code groups would eventually make sense and read a story of what was wanted to be transmitted.
Now, are these codes that the Japanese were sending, or are these American codes that you translated?
These were American codes.
Okay.
The Japanese codes were analyzed by a special group. Let's see if I can pull off the name of them. Anyway, they were specially trained. They were called supplemental radio units. They analyzed all of our own codes for mistakes, and they also analyzed Japanese codes, and were at one point were able to break their code. So they knew what was going on. And that's why it was so important that they thought was so important for the ships to sail under complete radio silence, so that the Japanese ships couldn't, through analyzing radio traffic, locate the ship that was sending the traffic. And they can do that very easily. But what the hell? The submarine already knew where the ship was, and that was the big hullabaloo about the Indianapolis when she was sunk after the war. Well, no, she was sunk. She had just delivered the A-bomb to the island of Tinian in the Guam group that was later dropped on the Japanese cities, Hiroshima and the other cities. The Indianapolis had delivered that A-bomb and then was on its way to Manila. And the submarine found her and sunk her because she was not traveling under silence. She opened up on the radio, and the submarine picked her up and located her and torpedoed her with a terrible loss of life. And caused all sorts of heck on that ship. The captain was court-martialed. The Japanese submarine officer testified against him and said that we knew where they were all the time. We could find them. We had them tracked. We had them dead to rights, and all we had to do was launch the torpedo to sink her. And so that was a statement of fact that radio silence wasn't working. And they used that to convict that ship captain when he was court-martialed. And he later committed suicide because the survivors of the crew communicated with their own parents, and they filed a lawsuit against the captain. And it was big.
So you had pretty high security clearance.
Yeah, I did. I had top secret clearance. Yeah. When a top secret message came in and was being decoded, when the person noticed or saw on there that it was top secret, they were instructed to immediately stop typing or decoding and give it to me to finish decoding. And then I was to hand carry it to the admiral, or to the one in charge. So that's what I did that every station I was at.
Now you were talking about that battle. Were you in any other battles?
That was the only one.
That was plenty. Wow.
We were far away. We knew the battle was going on from reports. We knew where Admiral Halsey was with his task force. No, we didn't know where he was. He had left his post that he was supposed to be guarding, and that was in Surigao Straits. That was the northern entrance to the bay. And there was a Japanese force from the north coming down, and a force from the south coming up. They were supposed to meet in the bay and annihilate the American force that was in there, the 7th Fleet. But and he left his post and went after a decoy, what turned out to be a decoy Japanese force. Then he took the bait and went after it, and we lost a number of ships on that one too.
And Halsey was British, right?
What?
Halsey was British, right?
He was what?
British?
Oh no.
Wasn't he?
Halsey
Okay.
was our naval officer. The British weren't in on that fight at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, anything else?
No, that's enough.